I'm first going to introduce Mayor Garza, who is going to come and tell us a little bit about what's going on at City Hall and with economic development right now. I specifically skipped our Chamber Economic Development Committee report because I think he may touch on some of those things during his comments, and I think you'll have more accurate information from the mayor. So welcome. Glad to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for asking me to come today. I understand that I'm supposed to give a report on two topics. One is the airlines and economic development. Of course, they go hand in hand together. Let me start off by giving you my view of economic development. I think we need to have a total type approach to economic development. It's not simply limited to what the city itself can do directly, but also what the city can do indirectly. What do I mean by that? I think we all collectively need to work on improving our own image of the city, how we feel about the city. We're proud of the city. We want to dress up the city. We want to improve the quality of life in the city. We want to work on all these intangible factors. Now, as far as economic development, of course, the airlines is an integral part of that. When I took office, we had a number of tasks. We got through the budget. We got through some other pending fiscal issues. So, and all along, we were receiving conflicting reports on the status of the airline. Some said that if we had a $1.1 or $1.2 million guarantee, we would be fairly assured of having airline service from American Airlines. Then we have a report saying that American Airlines was not considered value at all, and we were off the table. So I asked Ryan, and Ryan worked with the senator's office, with the congressman's office, with different people to try to find the people in charge at American who could give us some definite answers and give us a clear-cut direction. Where do we stand? What do we need to shoot for? What's our target? What's our goal? And so we finally got a meeting with a gentleman named Mr. Chuck Allen from American Airlines, who was in charge of the expansion portion and working with governmental bodies. So I quickly called an ad hoc committee and called on Channelie, Sid Cawthorn, Carmen Gutierrez from Hispanic, Photo, and Ken Smith from Alcoa. So we had a conference call with him. And basically what he told us is that the likelihood of airline service depends on the amount of revenue guarantee that we're willing to give. If we are willing to give a $5 million revenue guarantee, then he is willing to pull a plane from another city or do whatever airline American has to do and get us a plane in Del Rio. That's at one end of the continuum. If we want to simply pledge the $1 million or $1.2 million, then we're on the list for future consideration at some point in time. The higher the level of revenue guarantee we offer, the higher we move up on that list. So that sounded to simply be on the list is not a very encouraging proposition, although we are on the list. So what we've done since then, we had city staff call a community type meeting where we invited a number of community leaders, because I believe that this effort has to be community based. It has to receive the support of the community. We need the support of the community if we're going to embark on this particular endeavor. And everyone seems to be in support of it. There were a number of federal agencies that were there. One of the concerns was that the last time that United was here, the Laughlin Air Force personnel, many of the Border Patrol, other federal agencies were not able to use the airplane because of safety reasons. Hopefully we've eliminated that concern. During the conference with American, we of course stressed the need for the airline service, not only to protect Laughlin Air Force Base, but also for economic development. The other folks that were present at this meeting also pledged some support. We had some additional offerings from different individuals. I believe the Bank and Trust offered to contribute some amount. there's no question in my mind that we need this airline. The question is, what's the best approach? I think at this particular point in time, we are ready to embark on that. It is a $5 million guarantee. It's a substantial amount. The city had about $800,000, $750,000 from what I understand, in combination of grant and private contributions when I came into office. We went up, of course, from the bridge toll rate with the idea that we could use at least $200,000 of that toll rate increase to use towards the airlines. We have, of course, some additional pledges. We have some other things that we could do at the city. The city's planning to go out on an obligation CO issue. We could flip some of those funds and free up some available cash and probably raise close to $2 million, somewhat easily, within this year. And then, of course, the airline service would start like in April of next year, so we would have the 1-year guarantee period would run into the following year. I think we can, I feel very confident that we can easily raise a solid $2 million out of the operating funds. Of course, we have additional funding in the bridge fund that we can rely on if the council were willing to dedicate or to offer or to reserve some of those funds for that purpose. At this meeting, Mr. Valdez, the county judge-elect, was present. He didn't give any specific amounts. I tried to get him to write us a check for $2.5 million, but he said he couldn't do it yet. But he's offered to contribute somehow. So that's where we stand at. I was been thinking about how to structure this proposed agreement, what we need to do next. And one of the ideas that I just mentioned it briefly to Henry Gomez yesterday, was to approach the American Airlines to ask them we would approach it with a $5 million guarantee, but perhaps at the upper end of the $5 million. In other words, there's two different approaches. One to offer all $5 million, beginning with $100,000 on up, or the first $5 million turns out to be about $416,000 a month. I was thinking about approaching them with the idea first of offering them a $2.5 or $3 million guarantee, and it would kick in, or it would be triggered at the $216,000 level. In other words, our committee felt pretty confident that we would have 25 or 30 seats that were sold. So we would not be risking the entire $5 million. We felt that the airline revenue would be right around $2 million, $2.5 million at the minimum, perhaps $3 million. So the highest level of risk that we were looking at was $2 million. So I want to approach them with something that's a little bit less than $5 million. If not, we'll have to get back together and see if the council wants to proceed with the entire $5 million guarantee. As far as economic development, as I was saying, I think we need to work on all aspects of the city, continuing enhancing everybody's effort. Everybody's doing a great job. My concern at the city is we don't have any real funding available to try to attract business. We can all make efforts, but many times we need some hardcore dollars, what it boils down to try to attract companies to come here. In speaking to Ryan, who's got quite a bit of experience with the economic development in Dare County, many of the tools that are used are to offer companies X number of dollars once they have a job in the city for a year. For example, if you come here and they create 250 jobs, they get a certain type of incentive for the number of jobs, or some other measure of economic activity. But all that is dependent on having a fund. So one fund that is available to us, and the same committee that I was referring to earlier met, and they recommended one type of corporation. And in this field, there's two types of economic development corporations. There's a 4A and a 4B. The funding will be used on an A for manufacturing and industrial type purposes. The Section 4B is the same thing, but for quality of life projects. It can be for theaters, for parks, for other activities. And the committee felt that it was better to recommend the creation of an economic development corporation with 4A for industrial and manufacturing, which is acceptable to me. And under this particular economic development corporation, it would be covered by business people, not by politicians. That's to ensure the continuity of the corporation. The funding for it can come, and my proposal would be that it come from a portion of the sales tax revenue. We've looked at the numbers. It has to be in increments of 1/8 of 1%. 1/8 of 1% of sales taxes for the city in 1 year would be about $475,000. The challenge to the administration this year is to free up that $475,000. The city has traditionally, for all these years, relied on all the sales tax. So we need to, through a combination of reductions or perhaps increases somewhere, free up that $475,000 this year to be able to start at the end of this year as soon as we're able to create this corporation. So that the $475,000 from this, that's freed up from the budget from the sales tax will then be deposited into the Economic Development Corporation, and we can have at least that much every year. That would be the starters. We're working on a couple of other projects. Mr. Arredondo has a meeting with an energy consultant next Tuesday. One of the ideas that we've been pursuing is the possibility of the city selling electric energy or somehow entering that market. I've got kids in Austin, and there we always signed up the electric utility for the city of Austin. Their county has CPS. CPS is to the city of San Antonio what the bridge is to Del Rio, but a lot more. In Austin, the electric company provides over $100 million of revenue contributions to the general fund. In Austin, the CPS funds 20% of the budget. That's a huge, substantial revenue source. So my idea is to look for ways to expand the revenue sources into the general fund. If we can somehow expand the revenue sources to the general fund, it frees up even more sales tax revenue. It would be ideal to have like $1 million or closer to that every year to deposit into this Economic Development Corporation. And of course, that's going to be run, the idea would be run, that it would be run by business people, separated from the politicians and the elected officials. And the goal of that is to structure some type of incentives to attract people. That seems to be the real tool that's available within our arsenal of economic incentives. There's a couple of others, of course. There's a Chapter 380, but it depends on funding. Of course, it's going to come back down to the dollars that the city has. The other one that's common is the tax abatement. Of course, the tax abatement is what it is. It frees up taxes for any given period of time. I think most of you have heard there is one project that's pending with the city, and that's a solar farm. Those folks want to, what they are telling the city is that they want to invest $200 million in the city in the first couple of years in terms of temporary jobs and construction of the solar farm. They are representing to the city that it does not have an impact on Laughlin Air Force Base. We made it very clear to them at the meeting, and I made it clear to them earlier at a meeting that they held with staff and myself, that I would not, and I didn't believe the city would support the project at all unless it received absolute and total clearance from the base. Supposedly the solar farm relies on non-reflective material that will not affect the base. Supposedly there are other bases in the country that are utilizing some form of solar energy. So we're waiting for the verdict from the base on that. I am hopeful that we can get something like that if, for example, we were to get that type of project. They're talking about a minimum of 600 jobs up to 1,000 jobs for 1.5 to 2 years. and that would be an injection of $200 million into the local economy. I'm hoping that if that were to happen, that would give us the time to get started on the Economic Development Corporation and start offering some real incentives there. So that's basically the total approach. I want to start going into Mexico. I talked to Jorge Ramon, who was with the Economic Development Portion Office in Acuña, and is now at the Governor's Office in Coahuila. I talked to him at a Maquila meeting this past weekend. He's willing to set up a meeting with the Governor of Coahuila and others, and the heads of other municipalities in Mexico, again with the goal of trying to promote commerce and trade by the folks there into our city. I am told there's 250,000 people there in that immediate area. So if we could at least get 10% of those, the consul tells me that there's a good 60, 70, 80,000 people that can have passports and permission to come over here. But even if we could get 10% of that number, that would be an injection of 25,000 consumers into the local economy, which I think ups the possibility of the city attracting additional retail outlets or other type of economic activity. That's another approach, and I'm hoping to utilize. And of course, we still have the approach of trying to attract other business to the city inside and using efforts to promote the city and the lake and the other aspects that we have here to the surrounding communities. So in total, I think there's a number of things that we can do to try to enhance the economy. I'm open. My approach has always been to be open to whatever ideas. I've always tried to employ a philosophy that I say it's not exclusive. I don't by any means pretend to have the only workable idea towards economic development. I welcome whatever idea anybody can offer, and I'm trying to involve different members of the community and different committees to open up the city government. My pledge is to have a pledge of transparency, to make everything that we do at City Hall open to the public so that everybody can know what is happening and perhaps offer any ideas or join in that respect. So that's an overall brief summary of where we're at, and I'm hoping to make some real progress by the end of the first year in my office, hopefully have this Economic Development Corporation created. I'm very hopeful to try to resume airline service at least by the first half of next year, if not earlier. So I'm open to whatever questions. If anybody has any questions, I certainly would welcome that. Ken, I just saw you here. Questions? Okay, thank you, Shanley.
Thank you, Mayor.